Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard, learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. So I'm starting this podcast in January. And it's a new year. And it's not just any new year, but it's the year following 2020. And since this podcast is about finding gratitude, even in difficult times, I thought what better way to start than looking at how I found gratitude in 2020. So I want you to know a few things first. Why am I doing a podcast? Well, I'm an author, a publisher, and a speaker. And some call me a motivational speaker, but I'm not the kind of motivational speaker who's coaching you or trying to sell you something. I'm just someone who is an encourager. It's not what I do, it's who I am. When I started my Instagram platform, Amanda Speaks Out, a common theme expressed by the people who followed my feed was that they liked my feed because it was encouraging and honest. It was sometimes serious, but a lot of times funny. And when I started that account, it was really to have somewhere to share about my books, but more to share the amazing things that I see in everyday moments when I stop to notice, and also to form community. My second book actually came straight from that Instagram feed, and the foreword was written by a compilation of followers and what they had to say about what I was saying and what it meant to them. And an overwhelming kind of common thread among them was that the different things that I shared gave them hope and that they were encouraging. So I have a lot of amazing people lined up to be guests on here as well as my just sharing my own life and my own stories and thoughts. And I'd love to have some kind of community forum where you could ask questions or make comments, and also sign up to be a guest on the show. So I'll be working on that community, gathering people together so we can share our stories. That's always been a key factor in any of my books or talks. And I believe that we're better together, that we're made to live in community, and that the world falls short in providing places for genuine community to grow. I'm a Christian, so my faith is going to be the foundation of everything that I share, although it's not always the subject. It's not what I do, it's who I am again. Okay, let's settle in a little and get ready for my crazy story of the year 2020. Honestly, folks, I couldn't have written this story if I tried. There's twists and turns and faith and miracles, and it's a real doozy. So every December, I ask God to give me a word for the upcoming new year. Typically, I'm looking for words like joy or happiness, positive words, right? But the word that I received was like nothing I would have thought of myself. The word I heard was vacancy. I mean, what the heck kind of word is that? It's a weird word. It's a down, depressing kind of word. Who would give that to anyone? But it was also a word that I never, like I said, would have given myself. I couldn't rationalize that I had made it up or wonder if I had heard it right, like I have in the past with other words. Nope, this word was from out of left field, and it was not on my radar, and certainly not one that I wanted to even entertain. But there it was, like a bright red flickering neon sign on the side of an old hotel, vacancy, just shining its eerie mystery at me. 2019 had been a really great year for me. I finished my second book, began the editing process, and was ready to publish it in February of 2020. I was given an opportunity upcoming to speak about my life on a TV show, and I had books that I could share on the TV show as well. I was scheduled to speak as a guest on a podcast about women who take hold of their lives in their 50s and really make a difference and a change and pivot. And as I prepared for all of these events, I really felt like I was on a roll, I also had pre-scheduled my book signings. One was at a cool local coffee shop. There was a nearby bookstore and a huge Barnes and Noble store near me. And I was really feeling like I was on the path. I had been working so hard. I was doing what I was supposed to do, and everything was lining up. I was even asked to be part of an upcoming women's summit that was going to happen in the fall of the next year. And that was exciting to me. So getting my mind wrapped around a word like vacancy was a little scary. I mean, I journaled about it. I'm a journaler. I literally write down everything. I find it super helpful. And as I journaled, I felt that I was supposed to, in 2020, the vacancy, I was supposed to clear out all of the clutter in my home, my relationships, my thinking, and my heart. Tall order. To create clean spaces that were empty and ready to be filled. That there was so much more that God had for my life, but that I had left no room. There was no room for it. And He wanted to give me better things than what I was settling for. Things that I personally couldn't imagine. Things that I wouldn't even dare to dream of. That made the word seem a little bit better. In January of 2020, my family had started cleaning up my parents' attic. As it turns out, they had this big, beautiful magnolia tree that towered over their 1600s farmhouse, and it had become an elevator of sorts to the roof for a bevy of flying squirrels. I mean, see, I told you I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. So evidently, these flying squirrels had broken into the roof and made their home in the piles and piles of stuff that my parents had collected in the attic over the years. And the attic ran the entire length of the home. I mean, up there was just about everything. They had saved every piece of paper and ribbon, box book, piece of clothing, chairs, tables. And there's even the back seat of an old car was up there. So we had to clean it out. And I'm talking Tyvek suits with the attached footies and goggles and gloves. And my older sister was amazing. She really led the charge, as she had found the first dead little furry friend and then investigated to find the gigantic mess. She and her husband and my niece and her friend began the work, and then we all joined in as a family. And somewhere along the line, I ended up getting a pinched nerve while helping lower some heavy metal bed frames out a second-story window down to my son below. And for me, that was the first sign that 2020 was perhaps not going to be a great year. I was in excruciating pain all the time, 24/7. Nothing that I tried to help it worked. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't work without wearing this weird, as seen on TV, harness that I got for my back that kind of held my shoulders back a little bit and helped the pain in a little way. And I had stick-on heating pads on constantly, and I was living for my next dose of Tylenol. By February, with helping with my parents' attic, I was on the sit and sort through things duty because I really couldn't carry things anymore. And we were going through things that we thought still had value that weren't ruined. And I would go through them, so then I would give a smaller pile to my parents to look through. Eventually, we were done. We had an exterminator come. He had made escape hatches for our little flying friends, and then sealed everything up. And so, we knew there were no animals up there, no critters were with us, but there was quite a lot to clean out. So we eventually got the attic completely empty, probably for the first time in 50 years. My father ended up having a series of little falls. He just turned 90 this year, and before then had been doing really, really well. He's still doing great, but he got off balance. So luckily, no major breaks or bruises and cuts, but it became clear that my parents needed some help. Between the state of the house and the accumulated treasures in the falls. Now, my son and I lived down the road about 5 minutes. I owned my home, and we talked and we prayed about it, and we offered to move in to help them. They had built an addition on their house about 15 years before, knowing that they would one day need it, as the original historic farmhouse had, only second floor bedrooms and bathrooms, and they had kind of curvy wooden stairs. So they decided to stay in their home and to build this addition. But even with the addition, it was apparent that they were going to need help. We decided to offer to move over and help them. And we were thinking in the summertime to give us time to clean my house out. But then my dad had another fall. So we agreed to ramp it up and move sooner. So as we tore apart my house of more than 20 some years, suddenly the pandemic hit in March, and I had 2 months of no work. So we were in the red zone on lockdown here in PA, and I had 2 straight months to pull apart and pack up my home. And there it was again, that word, vacancy. I mean, oh my goodness, it was all happening so fast, and I didn't even see it coming. And as I cleared the clutter from my house, it was also being cleared. My relationships were being cleared, my thinking was being cleared, my heart was being cleared, just like I had written in my journal. And as I drove carloads of boxes and furniture back and forth to my parents' house through this ghost town of closed shops and watched people in lockdown on Europe on the TV, I realized for the first time, I guess, that the word vacancy wasn't just for me, it was actually for the world. So there's nothing more depressing than packing. I mean, I'm a make it look cute, throw pillow, everything in just the right place kind of gal. So empty walls and boxes everywhere was really depressing for me. I got rid of easily half or more of what I owned. Either it went into the dumpster or I gave it away to people who were in need. We couldn't rent a truck at that time. That wasn't even available, or be with friends to move things because of my parents. So we were trying to keep them in a bubble, and we were the only other people in that bubble. So we were trying to be so careful for them. And I had to cut out any social activities to keep them safe. We moved in on Easter weekend. My dad had another little fall, so we transitioned him to a walker. And we were able to be there to navigate all of that. We made a big home-cooked Easter meal and tried to make it as normal for them as possible. And instead of feeling scared or angry or depressed, I felt prepared and ready. I was really surprised. I felt forewarned and somehow destined to do this. Disappointments are inevitable, but discouragement is a choice. As I chose to believe in the good, the purpose of the situation, even with all the other emotions swirling around me, it lifted me above the other emotions, and it set me in this place of gratitude. My parents took care of me, after all. I mean, they did their best to help me grow and provide for me over the years. And as years went on, they were able to help babysit my children and be there for them. And they have been a blessing. Not everyone has parents, certainly not still alive at 87 and 90 years old. And I can't tell you how many friends of mine are just heartbroken and overwhelmed with the loss of their parents. So I know I can't even imagine what that's going to be like. I was helping people in need, not just for a minute or a day or an instance, but diving in feet first to who knows what and for how long. I mean, I call myself a Christian, and isn't that what Christians should be doing? But how many times do we shy clear as Christians of the hard service opportunities? Often I think we like to choose something that we know we can do or afford, and it's really not going to give us much pain or not going to feel much loss. And we move on, convincing ourselves that we did a good thing and we're good with God. But what if a real servant heart requires some suffering, some loss, some difficulty, some inconvenience, some uncertainty, some sweat, blood, and tears? I mean, what if this was truly the first act of serving others on behalf of the Lord that was going to stretch me and test me over a long span of time? Sure, I have gone on mission trips to places like Malawi, Africa, and walked on dusty trails between villages in the summer heat. Yes, I have gone for 2 weeks without electricity or warm showers and walked in the midst of famine and disease. I have mentored many young women and spent hundreds of hours praying with and for them, pouring into them, forming relationships that last. And yes, I have led community groups and been in women's ministry at my church and prayed for people, interceding for them, and spent time talking with those who don't know the Lord, written books to share the gospel, and spent countless hours growing social media platforms, all for God. Even this podcast, I started this for Him. But what if this one act of yielding to God to honor my parents with all that would entail was the most servant-hearted thing that I've ever had the chance to do? I mean, I could have not offered. I could have kept my nice life, my predictable life, my comfortable life. But friends, we have to ask ourselves the question, is that what Jesus would do? Not the trite, WWJD, but honestly, what would He have chosen? I mean, moving in with my parents meant working 24/7, keeping their house in order and paying their bills. I was their manager of medicines, doctors, every maintenance person who needed to come on the premises to fix the plumbing or work on the alarm system or exterminate critters, fix roofs. I was the run down the stairs at 3 a.m. if I heard a noise person, or call Pico when the lights were out and make sure everyone had their lantern scowl. And I was the get up at 5 a.m. to exercise before I maintained the property outside, and then tried to prepare foods for the week and schedules. And if I was really, really focused, have 5 minutes of time to spend with God and continue to throw content out onto platforms. I mean, what if the coronavirus doesn't go away and I can't see my daughter and son-in-law without a mask, or hug them for even longer than it's been 9 months now, because I'm trying to keep my parents safe? What if I can't continue to do in-person ministry or book signings or speak on platforms in person, all because of this one choice to submit to God's will and to follow where Jesus was leading me? I mean, when I chose to do this, I chose so many other things that I couldn't have even known yet. I have worn more hats and managed more problems than for any paying job I've ever had. And I was working as if I was serving the Lord for a sustained amount of time. Some days were very frustrating and difficult times. And can you imagine living with your parents again at the age of 56 and back in the house that you grew up in, back to the roots of all the things that you had spent years working through and growing from? I was also so blessed that my son came with me. He is the most level-headed, positive person that I have ever met. He is quiet unless it's necessary and funnier than any comic you'll ever find on TV. He keeps me sane and he makes me laugh, and is definitely the only reason I can do this. He is strong enough to open all the lids I can't, drag the trees we cut down, pull the English ivy roots taller than me out of the ground. He is part of the plan that God had for our family. I mean, 3 generations living together. Although God sees us as individuals, He also sets us in families. He says that I am the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He is well pleased to have intergenerational community. Back in the olden days, and in many countries currently outside of America, families care for their elderly and multiple generations live together. There is so much to be gleaned from each other. And when we're young, we need to be cared for and protected. And when we're old, we need the same. For 16 years, I worked private duty, helping people who were older. I spent 8 years with a couple in their home, managing their nurses and working myself, taking care of their home needs, much like I am now. I worked another 8 years with a woman who lived in a retirement home and was her advocate and her friend. When I look back now, not having worked in that ministry for the past 7 years, I see the preparation I have been given. And it was a gift from the one who knew the big picture. God works in large chunks of time, whereas we tend to look at the moment, the day, or the week, and he weaves in faithfulness and provision and protection and goodness that we'll miss if we don't stop to consider it. We start by stopping long enough to see affirmations and his wisdom, the stories and gifts that have been left all around us. God is speaking, but we rarely stop long enough to hear him. And some of us listen, but we listen like we're waiting for our turn to speak. We need to listen to hear what's being spoken. So my son and I had to empty out the entire second floor of the original part of my parents' house. I was dealing with parents who had grown up during the Depression, so they were savers of things. They saw value and usefulness in things that I did not. And I'm not saying they're not valuable, but in the situation, we needed to clear the clutter. It was a struggle to get them to share or throw away things, but over the past 9 months, they have really embraced the need to follow my lead, and they have just turned a corner and really come around to be really helpful. After we cleared the top floor, we were able to turn it into kind of apartments. We had a bedroom for each of us, a cafe area with a coffee maker, a pantry, a table, a small fridge, toaster oven, those types of things. So that first thing in the morning, we wouldn't be getting up and disturbing my parents in the larger kitchen. We had an office for our business and a prayer room for me, and there was enough space for everything, including our dogs. There were throw rugs and too many chair legs that were dangerous for my parents. And there were bigger things like redecking a deck and clearing years of Old English ivy and re-landscaping an area that was by where all of the electrical things were on the outside wall. Cutting down and hauling trees. Everything had to go. All the clutter had to be cleared. And the spaces made empty to be used in a better way. And there it was again, that word and that concept, vacancy. I had to always think ahead here, preparing for what was to come and how to clear out a space and use it in a better way. I made a clean room for family to come and visit, a place where my parents couldn't go, a place where we could put them in there. We'd all wear masks, and when they left, we could wipe everything down. We made an outside patio sitting area, a covered umbrella space for them to sit when it was hot. I brought in hummingbird feeders and hummingbirds. I added beautiful flowers, and I brought the house from what had become overgrown and weeded and a cluttered space to a well thought out and organized home. My dad said it best. He said, because we got older, we were just living here. But Amanda, you made it a home again. They didn't really know how to do anything different at that point. I mean, what they had been doing, they just continued to do. And it just piled on top of itself, and it made it more impossible to figure out. As the year began to end, I finally felt God prompting me this year to sell my home. I had been praying about it and waiting and considering different ideas, maybe renting, using it for ministry. But I hadn't heard anything clear other than to pay my taxes. And finally I heard, sell your home. It was really clear. So obviously we're staying here, and this season is what I was supposed to be doing. Even when it could have been a horrible experience, the day that I heard God say to sell, I made a phone call to a real estate agent that my daughter and son-in-law knew and had given me his number. And we set a listing appointment. We met, and he gave me a good, reasonable price. And then he offered to buy the place himself and to do all the paperwork through his office. We signed the contract and settled within 30 days, just before 2020 ended on December 18th. As I drove the check to the bank, I thanked God for preparing me, for giving me notice of what was to come, for all the cleaned places and all of the cleared clutter, the open spaces ready to be filled with new, better things. Friends, 2020 was a difficult year for people. People lost loved ones, and businesses and jobs and houses, and the list goes on. It was a year of injustice and political turmoil, and it felt like the world was ending. And I can't even begin to understand what some people have gone through. And yet when I look back at my life, I don't see the canceled book signings, the time off work, the drudgery of stripping my house bare and driving it one carload at a time, or throwing it away or giving it away, driving it to go put it into the excess space left in my parents' garage, not even really where I would have thought I'd be storing things. Instead, I see a word that prepared my heart, the purpose of caring for my parents through this pandemic, the value of hugs and laughter without masks and so much hand sanitizer. I see how prayer and time spent with God and His Word and listening and looking for His guidance matters more than any other diversion I might have. Anything else I let take its place. I see that when I waited for months until God said to sell, that selling my house was easy and pleasant and has left me with some money in the bank. I see that caring for my parents and honoring them instead of being selfish and honoring me has given me peace. I see the flowers and the hummingbirds and the patio sets and new couches and organized libraries and places for people to meet with masks on. I see hospitality and togetherness and community. So there it is, my 2020, a real roller coaster ride. I asked for a new word this year for 2021, and I was pleased that I was given the word, more than one word, favor and breakthrough. But they came as a result of the foundation of the first word, which was vacancy. Part 2 could not come until part 1 had been completed. I made spaces in my life and my heart last year for God. I cleared the clutter and prepared them for something new, something better, something unimaginable for me. It's a process, a transformation, and it takes time. So I checked into these words, and favor in Hebrew literally means grace, to bend or to stoop in kindness. Psalm 90 says, "The favor of the Lord should establish the work of our hands." So as I think about it, I receive His favor in order to produce things for His kingdom. And as I move for Him in favor, I will have breakthrough. But even that is all God. In Micah 3:24, it says, "They break through and pass the gate, going out by it. Their king passes in before them, the Lord at their head." Breakthrough, as it turns out, was originally a military term. And I'm reminded that breakthroughs seldom come without a battle, but the Lord will fight it for me. As I prepare to launch a new podcast this year, I am grateful to have God's favor and His breakthrough. And as I spend my life sharing His goodness, I know that I'm not doing this alone. And I'm not doing it for me. Final note is the closer you are to God, the closer you are to breakthrough. So now you've had a good taste of the kind of life I lead, how I tell a story, and the way that I look at the world. And what I want to do through this podcast is to continue to see the good, to encourage other people by the way that my life has gone, by sharing my story and sharing about my God. He has taken the things that could have been really difficult, really negative, and He's shown me all these silver linings, all these golden nuggets, all these bits of wisdom, all these jewels from Him. Things that give me hope, things that give me inspiration and encouragement. And they're not just for me. They're for you too. So I'm sharing as I promised Him I would do when I heard the words. And I am so grateful, guys, that you joined me. Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. You know, if you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.